Good morning, everyone, and happy Mother's Day to all our mothers at Hope Church and any other mothers that are watching this morning. I've been asked to share something about my mum, and many of you know my mum, Pam. If you don't know her, if you haven't met her yet, you'll know when you have, because she just loves the Lord and she just loves to share about what the Lord's doing in her life. And yeah, we're really excited for her coming home soon, because she's actually been gone now for just over 2.5 years, I think. She left initially to go to Teen Challenges Rehab in South Wales, and she was there about a year. But then she was encouraged to go to their Leadership Academy in Nottingham, which is where she is now, eagerly waiting to come back home here and share about all that the Lord's been doing in her life. And yeah, we're really excited to have her back home and to see the Lord use her here. We believe it's got in God's perfect timing. You know, I'm sure she's going to be home very soon, and just in time for the evangelism and the cafe and the outreach. And yeah, we believe that Lord's going to use her in a really powerful way in this town and this church. And yeah, I don't want to say too much, because I don't want to take from from her testimony, because yeah, it's going to be exciting, and that's something to look forward to when she comes home. So my grandmother Joyce is the other mother that I would like to talk about today also, because the Lord didn't just bless me with one mother, but with two. And I apologise if I get a bit emotional. I probably will, because my grandma passed away. It'll be a year next month, a year in April. And with the COVID restrictions and things, she wasn't able to have a proper funeral. We did have a funeral, but nobody was able to speak or say anything. And I'm just really thankful for this opportunity to be able to say some of the things I would have loved to say at her funeral, because she was such a wonderful woman. And I'd love to share with you about my grandma. And it was funny actually, because on the way home from the funeral with my granddad, he had a good laugh with me, telling me that the lady who had to do the talking about my grandma, she got a couple of things wrong, and yeah, it gave him a laugh on the way home. So yeah, it's nice to share about my grandma and what she meant to me. I was very blessed to have been able to stay with my mum through her addiction, me and my brother. We actually never knew about her addiction until quite recently, because she kept it a secret, she kept it hidden. And me and Walter, we just, were amazed at, what a wonderful job she did with me and my brother through her addiction. She looked after us. We always had clean clothes, not just clean, ironed, everything, even socks. we always had a clean home. We always went to school. We were always fed. We never went without food. I even remember my mum feeding other children whose parents had addictions and were struggling for food. So they would come to our house, and my mum would give them food. And the Lord just has had his hand on my mum all her life. And we're just amazed and that she did such a wonderful job. But as you can imagine, my mum having an addiction brought its difficulties to the home without me knowing what those difficulties were. As a child, I felt very lonely, and my home was quite a place of strife, really. More so because my brother had ADHD. He was a real handful for my mum, and she she used to say it must be God giving me the patience for him, because everybody else was telling her to put him in a care home, or because he was very difficult, and he would have violent outbursts and things, but my mum didn't want to do that. And I can remember he was offered a place at a residential school where he would come home at the weekends, and I begged my mum, I'm like, Mum, please, this is the answer, like, it'd be brilliant, please just let him go to this residential school. And I love my brother. We have a great relationship, and we always have, actually. But but I thought, it'll be brilliant, we'll have some peace in the week, and there won't be all this strife and anger and upset in the home. But my mum, she couldn't do that. She loved my brother, and she always said she just couldn't do that. And it was funny because I had a phone call with my brother only last night, and he's at university now. And he was telling me that he had to do a presentation. He said, I didn't even know I was going to have to do it. He says I was put on the spot with it. And he was asked, who has been your inspiration, and he said to me, I said, Mum, because she was always there for me. And she never gave up on him. She was always there for him, and that was just lovely to hear, and so encouraging to hear. But yeah, it was difficult at times, and we would go and visit my grandparents on a Saturday. We'd go every Saturday. My grandma would make us a lovely home cooked meal. She was just the typical grandma with the apron on, and she'd just bake something, and she's making us a nice home cooked meal. And I remember as a child, I'd go to my grandma and granddad's house, and I just feel it was so homely, and you just, that sense of homeliness and love and warmth in the house, and I loved going there. They'd let me stay over sometimes, and yeah, I loved going to my grandma and granddad's, and at home, because it was just me and my mum and my brother, and there was all the issues with the anger and what have you, I kind of kept out of the way, because when I was around, it seemed to make things a bit worse, and things were a bit easier if I stayed out of the way. So I felt very isolated and very lonely as a child. And I longed for a family. I did. I longed for a family. And my mum is part of a big family. She was one of 10. She is one of 10. And I had loads of cousins. Most of them lived in Preston, and we would only see my mum's side of the family when for special occasions. So I didn't really know my mum's parents all that well. We would just go for special occasions, and I loved it. I loved being with my cousins. I loved that sense of family. And my mum would say, "Oh, I hated it growing up. I just never had any peace, and I just want peace and just want quiet." And I'm like, "What do you mean? I wanted to be part of the Waltons." And I'm like, "Come on, let's move to Preston." Her sisters were always asking her to move there. And I'd say, "Mum, please, can we go to Preston?" And she'd say no. She'd say, I've stayed here with your grandparents, who are my dad's parents, so that you can have a relationship with them. And I am so thankful to my mum that she did that for us, because we have been so blessed through my grandma and granddad, and the love that they showed to us. Yeah, I became very, very difficult as a teenager. I'm told that I was very good and well behaved and compliant as a young child, but then I went to secondary school and everything changed, and I became hard work for my mum. I know I did, and she already had a lot to deal with my brother already. And I'll just share two particular examples with you actually. I remember I must have been 11 or 12 years old, and I was hanging out on the streets and on the estate where we lived, because I just wanted to be out of the house. I just wanted to be with people, and I found a family with people on the streets who were drinking and what have you, and I had my first drink. I was either 11 or 12, and I got very, very drunk. My mum didn't know this, and I kind of went back into the house. I managed to hold it all together. I said, "Oh, I'm back, Mum, I'm going to bed." Ran upstairs and got into bed. And my mum ended up coming into the room to turn my light off. And she said she wouldn't have come in the room if it wasn't for the light being on. But when she came in the room, she found me lying on my bed in a pool of my own vomit. And she rang my granddad, because we didn't have a car, and my granddad came. It was late at night, and he took us up to the hospital. I stayed in hospital for the night. And then there was another incident around this, a little later, around the same time, where I took an overdose. I must have been 12 or 13, and I just couldn't cope. I couldn't cope with my home life. I just felt like I just can't cope with this. I just want it to end. And I took this overdose and I went to sleep. But I woke back up in the morning, and this fear set into me. I'm like, oh, what have I done? What if something bad's going to happen to me? And I took myself to the hospital, and I didn't want my mum to know anything about it, because I knew she had so much to deal with already with my brother, and I just didn't want to put anything more on her. So, sorry, I'm begging the nurses, please, don't tell my mum. Sorry. And they talked me round eventually, and my mum came. And it was difficult for my mum. It put a lot of extra strain on her, with what she already had to deal with. And I remember we went to a caravan, and with my grandparents, we were on a holiday, and I nearly did it again, so took an overdose again. But I told my mum that time, we was arguing, and I said, I just can't take it. It's just, I just want to take an overdose. Anyway, she found that so hard, and my grandma and granddad, not being her parents, really supported my mum and was really there for her. And what was amazing was they never said a thing to me. They knew all these things, they knew that I was getting into this trouble, and my mum was offloading, and they were, being there for her really, but I don't remember them ever saying anything to me. But what they did do was they just loved me. They just loved me unconditionally, and yeah, I always remember my grandma. She just always had open arms, and she'd always, she'd give me a big hug. We weren't a a touchy, affectionate family at all. But my grandma, she would always hug us, bear hug us, and she always had this bright red lipstick on, and she'd give us a big kiss, and we'd always have this big lipstick kiss on our cheeks, and she did that, even as we got older. But yeah, it was lovely, and one thing that really stood out to me as I got older was that my grandma's door was always open. I could go there anytime, and she was always happy to see me, and in fact she was always thankful that I'd been, and I was like, she's just so thankful that I've been to see her. But it was really just a blessing for me, she'd open the door, she'd welcome me in, my granddad would make us a cup of tea, and she'd say, do you want anything to eat, a piece of cake? And she just cared about me. She cared about what was going on in my life, and I miss those times. I do. I miss having somewhere to go where the door is always open. Where you're going to be met with open arms and love, unconditional love. So yeah, she was amazing. She really was, and I miss her. I do. I miss her. Unfortunately, before she passed away, she was battling Alzheimer's for quite some time. So it's strange that I'm now having to, I guess it's like grieving twice. But I'm so thankful for this opportunity to share about my grandma when I didn't have that opportunity at a funeral. So thank you for listening. There is a verse in a couple of verses, Psalm 68, 5-6, and it says, "A father to the fatherless, a defender of widows, is God in his holy dwelling. God sets the lonely in families. He leads out the prisoners with singing, but the rebellious live in a sun-scorched land." The Lord knew what I needed and what my mum needed here on the earth, and he graciously provided that through my grandma, and I'm so thankful to the Lord for that. But even more than all that, he showed us his perfect love in Jesus, so that we can be truly made whole through faith in him. And how wonderful that he sets the lonely in families. I was lonely and I longed for a family, and now I've got a huge family. The family of Christ is so big, and yeah. But he also gives us a spiritual family as well as an earthly one, and I have to give thanks for the spiritual mothers that he's placed in my life, and Jan is certainly one of those among others that has stood in the gap and showed me that continued love and encouragement in the faith. So thank you. My mum has an amazing testimony, and I'm so excited for her to come home, and I'm really proud of her for having the courage to go and get the help that she's needed so that she's been able to be restored to the woman and the mother and the grandmother that the Lord created her to be. So thank you for letting me share this with you. Happy Mother's Day, Mothers of Hope.